Good evening. My name is Aleš Ernitzel. For those who don't know me, I'm an ex journalist, a philosopher by formal education, and I'll be interviewing or letting speak Dr. Duchesne, a big name on X or X Twitter. I've been following him for years now, and it's been a privilege for him to accept my invitation because I'm a small channel and he's a big guy on X and in this tweetosphere. So, Dr. Duchesne, thank you for accepting my invitation and welcome to my channel.
Oh, okay, hello, Alex. Is it Alex your name?
We pronounce it Alesh.
Alesh. Okay,
Yes,
Alesh.
Alesh.
So yes, I'm glad to be here and talking to someone that's in Slovenia, and that's great.
So, I imagined our conversation like this. First, you introduce yourself, your formal education background, your works, and then we go as we will see how it goes on. So
Okay.
please tell us something about your formal education, your background, your ex professor.
All right. So I'm located in Canada. Right now, I am in the province of New Brunswick, which is in the Atlantic region. And I was a professor at the University of New Brunswick for about 25 years. I was a tenure professor. And in 2019, I experienced an academic mobbing. That means that basically dozens of professors, over 100 of them, formally went on the attack against me and wanted me to be censored and suspended from the university. And so eventually, after a few days of going through this was in May 2019, I decided that the best option for me was to take early retirement because it was impossible to exist in an environment where everybody's against you, to go to work there. People don't understand that, but it's hard. So that's one fact about me. I'm the author of 4 books. My first book was The Uniqueness of Western Civilization. It was published in 2011. And after that, I wrote Faustian Man in a Multicultural Age. That was it was written in 2015, but it came out in 2017. And then soon after, I wrote Canada in Decay, Mass Immigration and the Ethnocide of Euro-Canadians. And that book came out also in 2017. It actually became a big bestseller at Amazon, and that lasted for about 3 years. So I got good royalties from it. Eventually, Amazon began to suppress it and deleted a bunch of customer reviews. And after publishing Canada in Decay, I and 2 years later, I took early retirement in 2019. I began to work on my fourth book, which came out this April, 2025, this April. I have a copy here. So I don't know if I have it in reverse. Sometimes that happens.
It's reverse, yeah.
It's in reverse. So how do you put it so it's not in reverse?
Well,
This
I see it in reverse. I don't know how the
this way? Is that in reverse?
yeah, it's reverse.
It can, it's impossible. It looks to not put it in reverse. I don't know if you have to turn it around. But anyways, this is a book. You can find it in Antelope Publishers. Or if you go to my X profile, you'll see the link there. And this book is a lot of it is about the achievements of Europeans and in all the fields. Usually when people debate the rise of the West, what makes the West different, the standard approach is to concentrate on the Industrial Revolution. The argument is that the West really diverged, became different from the rest when it industrialized. And some will also say when modern science, Galilean and Newtonian science emerged, that's when the West became different. I argue that the West diverged, was different since ancient times. And one of the ways that I make that argument is that I concentrate not just on economic developments, technology, and science, but across the board in the arts, painting, sculpture, literature, philosophy, mathematics, you name it. Even furniture. I have a section on furniture in this book. I demonstrate that one of the things that distinguish the West European civilization is that it was far more creative. In fact, it was more creative than the other civilizations combined. So that's one of the key arguments I make in this book. Another one is why did a civilization that accomplished so much is now into diversity, into this idea that we bring millions of immigrants and that they're going to culturally enrich the West. So I try to argue how did Europeans come to that belief? And I believe that ultimately this is rooted in the ideology of liberalism. Liberalism is the dominant ideology across the West. Even conservatives like Trump remain liberals. There is a left side to liberalism and there is a right wing side. But on the fundamentals, they agree. I mean, Trump and conservatives generally are into diversity, into legal immigration, and they accept many other premises of liberalism, including the idea that uh, capitalism should have a free reign over how society is organized. Whereas I am of the view that if European peoples are to survive, they need a strong state. In Hungary, the leader of Hungary is trying to, he's a stronger guy, and he wants to have some real determination of the path that Hungary takes. He doesn't want the business class to make that decision because if you allow the business class, they will go for open borders. They want big markets. They want a lot of cheap labor and a lot of consumers. And if they can turn beautiful cities into big parking lots and shopping malls and make it very commercial, they go in that direction. So you need a strong state to protect your heritage, your architecture, your culture, and then you can have a free market, but it has to be within the framework set by a strong state. So that's one of the arguments I also make in my book, Greatness and Dream. It is a complicated argument to actually go into the details as to why it is that liberalism leads to a situation in which whites lose their identity and view every individual in the world as a potential citizen, as an equal member of the West. I think that's rooted in liberalism. So I'll start with that and then you have other questions.
Yeah, please, you can start immediately. If I can say only one thing about it's my own experience or the experience of Slovenes and the Slovenes state with liberalism is it's they always say, and it's not only in Slovenia, it's all over the West and the Europe and East Europe, and they say that the economy needs foreign people, foreign immigrants, because Slovenes, Germans, Americans, they don't want to work simple or hard or messy jobs. This is what they say. Um, but they also say it's we need them to pay to subsidize our socialized systems. For example, in Slovenia, we have socialized healthcare system. We have socialized practically everything. America purports to not have socialized, although it is in some sense, at least in hidden in many ways. But yeah, it is connected. The argument of even the right wing, the conservative, classical liberal right wing is, yeah, we have to, for our parents to have pensions, we need foreigners
Yeah.
because we are dying out. For example, every Western or Eastern Europe or Middle European population is supposedly dying out, and because it's dying out, we have to have foreigners to subsidize the pensions of our parents, the boomer
Yes.
generation. This is the main argument. So, but my point here is that if this is the main argument, then it's not only liberalism; it's intertwined, isn't it? This left big state um, and the minarchist. It is a little bit intertwined, isn't it?
Yes, the thing is that in Europe, when you use the term liberalism, that's associated with free markets, with what we understand by conservatism. That's how Europeans understand liberalism. And then when you talk about woke or leftists in Europe, that means socialists. My view is that, or I use the term liberalism to include conservatives, socialists, middle of the road liberals, woke, the people that are called communists, I argue, are also liberals. Communism was defeated when the Soviet Union collapsed and when Eastern Europe, the Warsaw Pact ended, and Eastern Europe, a lot of those countries in Eastern Europe joined the EU or NATO and became part of Western Europe. Um, to me, that was the end of communism. You have North Korea or Cuba, but that's now irrelevant and insignificant. The ideology of liberalism, in that respect, I agree with Alexander Dugin. The ideology of liberalism dominates the Western world, and it has a left and a right wing side. So when you were talking before about the argument that some Slovenians are making now, that in order to have pensions, in order to have socialist policies, they argue we need immigrants because we tax them and then we generate the income that can fund the pensions and fund the welfare, unemployment insurance, hospitals. So the left socialists in Europe argue for immigrants from that angle, but the right wing, the conservatives in Europe, also want immigrants, but for further capitalist business expansion. They want cheaper labor, like you were saying. They're saying that there are many jobs that ordinary Slovenians or Europeans don't want to do. So they justified on that ground. So in many ways, the socialist, the left side of liberalism has come together with the right. Now that doesn't mean there are no differences. There are some differences. Trump, who's a right-wing liberal, has substantial differences with the other side, so much so that they may come into a kind of quasi-civil war. So there are differences. Um, but Trump still agrees with the fundamentals of diversity, with integration. In my view, integration with blacks in the United States has proven to be a failure. You can go to X and it's just one case after another of another white person killed. And I mean, we only hear a few cases. There are many that happen every single day. The schools are a mess. Um, the schools continually have to downgrade their curriculum in order to meet the standards of blacks. The same thing is going on in universities. Neighborhoods are terrible. I mean, if you have a home and blacks start coming into your neighborhood, the property value is going to collapse. It's going to get dirtier. So for this and many other reasons, integration, in my view, has failed. However, the right wing or the conservatives in both Europe and the United States are all into bringing more blacks and integrating with them, creating a multiracial society, which I think is not going to work and is not working. So that's what I mean by liberalism. Now, if you want the essential definition of liberalism, it really means that you think of the individual as the ultimate basis upon which society should be founded. By that I mean that individual rights, the rights of individuals to uh, be who they want to be, who make their own choices, choose their own religion, choose their own philosophy, regardless of sex. And citizenship then is defined, who can be a citizen in England or Germany or France right now is defined strictly in liberal terms. It could be any individual from anywhere in the world. So ethnic ancestry doesn't matter. Culture does not matter. It's just a matter of you coming in and you're viewed as the same as other individuals in that society. So to me, that's liberalism. It's a society that has lost its sense of ancestry, its sense of cultural identity, and has no collective view of itself. If you want a society to preserve its heritage and culture, you have to have a state that has a clear understanding of what is the collective culture of that state, what it means to be Slovenia. And these kind of things are taught in schools. In Canada, students barely know anything about Canadian history other than the bad things that whites did to the Aboriginals. That's emphasized over and over again. In fact, today, there is no school in Canada because they created a new holiday, which is called Truth and Reconciliation, meaning that whites apologize to natives in Canada. And I just wrote a post at X. Natives or aboriginals, they get $40 billion per year from taxpayers, many of whom or most of whom are whites. So already whites are paying them $40 billion per year. Meanwhile, they have the highest crime rates in Canada among themselves. They blame whites for these crimes, by the way, but it's crimes among themselves. So, yeah, this is the nature of a liberal society in where you don't have a collective identity and you're trashing your heritage, speaking badly about it, and you just have individuals from all over the world claiming to be equal citizens. To me, that is a fundamental flaw in the Western world.
As you said, I can speculate, and I'll probably be right, although I don't have a clue about Canadian situation. I would say that there is a right wing and there's a left wing explanation of why Aborigine has have such high rates of criminality. Probably, correct me if I'm wrong. The right wing, for example, Jordan Peterson would probably say that it's because they don't have fathers. There's a lot of alcoholism. There's cultural equation to it,
Yeah.
and the left would probably say, no, no, no. It's just because they're poor, and they're poor because the whites oppress them. Am I right?
Yes.
You're
Yes. That is a standard argument from both the left and the right. Um, Both of them are flawed. The Jordan Peterson argument is a bit better. It is true that there is family breakdown among natives. The problem with that Jordan Peterson argument is that he says the solution is that they have to take responsibility for that reality. That's his solution. Um, but in a liberal society, there's always a sense in which the on issues like this, the left will have the higher moral standing. It will win the argument, which is why in Canada, conservatives agree with sending billions to natives. They may say, let's say a little bit less, but nobody touches that issue. Conservatives are very careful with going against the whole Aboriginal situation because it has become a big moral thing that you're supposed to accept. From the moment you're in school, very young, white children are taught that natives were living a wonderful life in Canada. They loved nature, animals were happy, and the whites came and destroyed everything. So that there is always this very powerful moral argument that the left side has on its side that makes them win the argument. But yeah, that is basically the difference between the right and the left on the issue of aboriginals.
Yeah, I can see this commentary of Jack Morgan. There is a documentary how church was doing genocide on native people in the 50s. Yeah, and it's everywhere is the same. You get the conservatives on one side and the church and whoever, and on the other side, this liberals, progressives, leftists, whoever. And the matter of fact is, these are both foreign ideologies, or at least if they're not foreign anymore, because many of whites adopted them spiritually, they are foreign in the sense that they don't care about the interests of white people at all.
Yeah,
They don't start with the position of, okay, what's in our interest. It's not in our interest to prefer one economic class before the other. It's not in our interest to blame ourselves for what we did to the minorities or whoever. So it's basically forced upon white people, and through education they spiritually adapt it, and afterwards you get what we can see
yeah,
probably.
yeah. It's aboriginals are like blacks are in the United States. Aboriginals have that status in Canada now. They're used to continuously inflict guilt on whites. And the argument is really, in many ways, insane because underpinning this argument is also the idea that uh, whites really need to be diversified because when they were on their own here in Canada, they committed these crimes. And it's almost as if they're saying whites are just really bad on their own. Once we bring Pakistanis, Africans, and Muslims, we all get along with each other, and the natives are also going to be really happy. In reality, this is absurd because the immigrants don't care about the natives. They only manipulate. I mean, they manipulate this argument. If you tell, for example, an Indian, you know, I believe that we should restrict immigration. Very quickly, they will say, well, you're living in stolen land. They repeat this argument. This argument has spread all the way into India, into the third world, that what whites have, they stole it from other people, not just Canadians, but all whites. Everything they have, not everything, but there is that argument that through imperialism, through colonialism, the West enriched itself. So they live on stolen land or on stolen resources from Africa. And they use this argument to justify the replacement of whites. These arguments were developed very slowly through academia. In my first book, Uniqueness of Western Civilization, I go very carefully over all those arguments. The argument that Europe developed, industrialized by extracting resources from the rest of the world. And I argue that actually it is the other way around. Uh, Europeans in the first place were able to colonize the rest of the world, because in the contest for power, everybody's contesting for power. They won that contest because they have better organization, a better equipment, better institutions, navigation, shipping, you name it. They were better, and they successfully were able to colonize other areas of the world. But these areas of the world, including in Canada, they were fighting among themselves, trying to take land from each other. And in the long run, when you look at the effects of colonialism, first, it was overall beneficial to many of these places of the world. The other point is that uh, Europeans did not become rich by colonizing other lands. Switzerland had no colonies, Sweden had no colonies, Norway had no, no colonies, Germany had one or two, and all these nations became very wealthy without extracting anything from the rest of the world. It was really mainly Britain and France that had colonies. Spain, on the other hand, had huge territories, but they didn't manage to industrialize. So this argument is inadequate. By and large, Europeans developed modern science and modern industry through their own initiative, through a long history of new ideas, new institutions, new technologies, and so on.
When we say Europeans, whites, many times we have different definitions of what white is or what Europe. Okay, not European. European is who comes from Europe, but for example, it's pretty obvious that when we talk about the creativity and the authors of modern science and so forth, it's pretty obvious that these people are predominantly Northern European, wouldn't you say? Although that there are people from Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, individuals
Yeah.
who created some things, but predominantly you would say it's Northern Europeans that are um, that would be mostly correlated with this Faustian spirit, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I thought at first, because I know that in Europe, the term white is not used as often as it is used in the United States. So Americans tend to say white because of the presence of blacks. So it sort of became a white black thing. Europeans, not really, maybe they are starting to in places like England, and through the influence of the internet, they're beginning to use the word white, but many of them still define themselves in their European terms, like Slovenians, Slovenia, Hungary, and French, Germany. They define themselves that way. Now, in regards to the Faustian man argument, which is an argument that I make in my second book, it's a shorter book. You can find it in Arctos, Faustian Man in a Multicultural Age. Um, so in that book, I have a chapter there in which I define what Faustian is and why I think that this term, which I borrow from Spengler, Oswald Spengler uses that term. It means really that Europeans from early on, Spengler believes that it was in the early Middle Ages. I tend to say that the ancient Greeks, the Indo-Europeans, were already Faustian. And by that, I mean an expansive spirit, a restlessness, a dynamism. You see it among the Europeans when they expanded from what is present day Ukraine, they spread through the whole ancient world into Europe, and you can see them navigating and moving on horses. They domesticated horses and learned how to ride them, co-invented wheeled vehicles, and began to move. And they had a better diet of milk and dairy products, and they This gave them a dynamism that I see very early on in their history, but it's also a spiritual curiosity, wanting to to break through the unknown. What is not known, they want to know it. They want to know the stars. And so today we have a situation in which Europeans have named as many plants as they can find, the insects, the birds. They classify them, they name them. Other societies, cultures did none of that. They even name all the stars, the ones that they have observed, they always give them a name. So it's an amazing phenomenon. And they invented almost all the sports. Um, this is something that I talk about in my recent book as well. So yeah, that's in a very general way. By Faustian, I mean this spiritual, psychological energy and restlessness that you observe among Europeans.
What would you say about mm, Ashkenazi Jews in as in a part of white civilization? Because they have been a part of the white civilization for quite long. I don't know how long the Ashkenazi Jews exist, but since they existed, I think they have been a big part of this European civilization. I am not the guy that would not critique the Jews and so forth, but I do seem to, when I look at this white civilization, it's really hard to say that the Jews didn't have some part in it. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, if you
Not only
mean
parasitic, but also creative.
right. So uh, I don't really know that much, but the way I see it is that clearly Judaism is about three quarters of the Bible. The Hebrew Bible is 75% of the Bible, I think. Um, so it is there, their thinking in terms of religion is right there in a central book that play a big role in the making of Western civilization. However, one of the arguments I make is that um, Christianity, when it took its own path, Christianity, the Christian theologians of the first centuries, the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth century, these are many years, 500 years, 600 years, and afterwards, the major Christian thinkers were heavily influenced by the Greek philosophical legacy and the Roman cultural legal legacy. They accepted and assimilated that legacy and that history, the Christian, whereas on the other hand, the Jews moved in a Talmudic direction and became a self-enclosed cult. They moved into various areas of Europe, but they remained separate. They were not participating in the West. They were their own group for many centuries. They only started participating in the West after the Enlightenment in the 1800s. Of course, you will find before that a Spinoza here and these other thinkers, but it's very few cases. Um, Now, yeah, in the Middle Ages, in the Islamic world, there were Jews that participated there as well. But by and large, very much, they remain a separate group with their own Talmudic thinking, which has nothing to do with the West. And the Hebrew side of the Bible was framed within Christianity and also through the influence of Greek philosophy. That's Catholicism. It's very much influenced by Greek philosophy. Um, so that's one way, one first answer I would give. Now, the other question is whether Jews have played a significant role in pushing radical ideas about immigration, diversity, integration. And yes, my view is that they have played a significant role in radicalizing liberalism. I don't believe it is all the Jews. Like if somebody says the Jews to everything you say, then I disagree with that. But there's no doubt that Jews, particularly in the United States, but in other places, including Australia and France and so on, that Jews have been very avid, eager, earnest promoters of diversity and also of identifying any act of white identity, of ethnic nationalism, immediately putting the label Nazi on that, saying this is fascist, this is national socialism, and closing the doors and not allowing whites to uh, find a way to have their own in-group identity. So
I
in
mean,
that respect, they
in
have.
one sense, it's understandable because they are the prototype of the mixed race people. Practically, they are. If they are, I don't know. I'm not keen to believe in the Khazar theory, but I'm not sure. I cannot say. I haven't studied enough, and
Yeah,
I don't have evidence. But if they are this semi-Semitic, semi-European people, they're the prototype of the mixed race people, and from this position, it's understandable and totally natural that they are against monolithic societies
oh
because
yeah,
they can more easily blend in the societies where there are all where all people are mixed. So when some Jews or some leftists or some rightists say that Jews are not behind promoting mixed races or mixed ethnic societies, they all obviously lie.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's very true. They feel very uncomfortable when they see whites having a collective ethnic identity. They don't like it at all. And as I said before, there have been very avid, obsessive promoters of diversity, and very quickly they label you a fascist and a Nazi if you dare to try and talk about white identity. So in that respect, I have no doubt in my mind that the Jewish question is very important. Um, and that people like Nick Fuentes are correct that in the case of the United States, it's just amazing the incredible influence that Israel first has on American foreign policy across the board, whether it is Republicans or Democrats. It's almost as if a politician in the United States is not able to function unless they swear allegiance to Israel. It is as if they have to do that. There are very few that don't do that, but they're ostracized. They're not allowed in the mainstream media. So when you listen to Fox, when Trump was running for election and all of that, I like what they were saying against Kamala Harris and that they were for Trump because I wanted Trump to win. But on the question of the war in Gaza, is completely 100%. They don't allow divergent viewpoints. You see a bit more divergent viewpoints among the Democrats because many of them think that the Israelites have taken excessive measures there. Um, so yeah, I mean, in that respect, it is a question that needs to be opened up, that we need to start debating.
If I may provide you with this information, it will probably shock you. There's a right wing, the mainstream right wing party in Slovenia, SDS. Their president has been or was a prime minister three times in 30 years. He's been the president of the so-called the most democratic party for 30 years and three times prime minister. And I've been asking them on Twitter or on X Twitter on X, what if what if Mossad or Likud or Israel, what if they say to you, okay, Ljubljana, which is our capital city, there are Hamas chiefs hiding beneath our university hospital in Ljubljana, for example. What would you say? Can they bomb our capital city or this hospital? And I was shocked myself, although I knew they were like this Likud little party, which are probably all the right wing parties in the world are probably little Likud parties, even the Republican Party in America. But I was really shocked when the majority of this SDS members or whoever on Twitter, they said yes.
Yeah.
They would have allowed it.
So do you have in Slovenia the do you have a strong nationalist identity there, or is it breaking down?
No, it's been breaking down. I mean, to explain the situation very fast for people who don't know the situation. We've been in ex-Yugoslavia. Slovenes are predominantly or have been predominantly Middle European, genetically, culturally. So we are genetically and culturally more similar to Austrians, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, and not so much Northern Croats, maybe, but not so much to Southern Croats, Serbs, Bosnians. We have we have a similar language to them, although not the same. But we are more similar genetically and culturally with Slovaks, with this Middle European people.
Okay.
Prominently, if you talk about haplogroups, R1A and R1B, predominantly R1A and R1B. So, and in 91, there's been this clear tendency to for this ethnic nationalism to rise. It seemed back then that we hated Serbs or all the ex-Yugoslavians and so forth, but it's later on it's gotten worse with the immigration because they used to say, the right wing used to say that the communist regime was trying to mix people in Yugoslavia to create the artificial Yugoslavian
Right.
or a race or whatever. But in Yugoslavia, Slovenes have been isolated practically. Yes, that there have been some mixed marriages, and I'm, for example, one of the products of such a marriage. My mother's Macedonian, my father's Slovene, but not many, not many. But after the 91, after the independence, and because of I mean, the capitalism has been used as an excuse. Not that the capitalism is the. I wouldn't say that the capitalism is the cause, but it has been used as an excuse to bring as many people from all over the world. First from ex-Yugoslavia, then from all over the world, from Africa,
Really?
Nepal.
So
Yeah,
you're getting Africans and stuff there?
yeah. Now from Nepal, from Pakistan, I don't know,
Wow.
from everywhere. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
those from Africa and Middle East are probably from this illegal immigrant crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
But the others are legal. The others are legal, and it has created. I mean, for example, to explain or to describe my own situation, it's never been like that. That I went to the center of our city, Maribor, and we don't hear Slovene language anymore.
No.
We only hear Serbo-Croatian, Ukrainian, Albanian. It's really gotten. It's never been like that. We've always been predominantly Slovene in
Yeah,
our
yeah.
country, but now it's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in Poland, I hear that you see similar trends, and it appears that the moment you integrate into the Western world, these two forces, liberalism and capitalism, are so powerful in transforming these societies. As I said, the business class, uh, by their very nature, they are internationalist. People often say that communists are internationalists, and that's true. The concept of a proletariat, when Marx said the workers of the world have nothing to lose except their chains if they unite across national boundaries. We also have to realize that the business classes have always been united across national boundaries. I say always, but of course, this is a process. And because in the past, national identities and traditions were stronger, that kept the business classes in check. But once you get into the 20th century, post World War II, and you have Americanization and open borders and multinationals, you're going to see the effects of this capitalistic world and mentality, which is that it just wants to generate consumerism. Uh, if you have a small Slovenian town with historic buildings and a strong identity, that's not good for business, unless you turn it into a touristic attraction, in which case it's just tourism and tourism going in there, which makes them lose their character. So they really want highways, Costco. All, if you look at all the globalist retailers, these are the movers of this movement, and banks and so on. So this is something that people have underestimated because they concentrate on wokeness. They even call them communists. I mean, there are many Americans that say, "Oh, the communists are the problem," and I tell them they're not communists; they're finished. So these are just business people and the woke liberal. So that combination is lethal, and in my view, it will destroy the whole of European people if we don't stop it. Yes.
This is really strange. This is what right wing in Slovenia and in America, of course, has been doing for a while now. Yeah, they've been calling communists these woke leftists, and this woke leftists couldn't be more different from what communism originally
Yeah.
was. At least, I mean, um, homosexuality was prohibited in communist Yugoslavia till, I don't know, 74 or something like that. So it's pretty obvious. Okay, you could make an argument that the old communists were, in their childhood, they were, maybe they were more conservatively brought up. Maybe the old generations, maybe you could make this argument, although many of the leaders of the Communist Party in Yugoslavia also were Jewish, and probably weren't from the Orthodox Jewish families, but some secular whatever that forgot their religion and any kind of conservatism long time ago. Um, but yeah, this wokeness obviously came, not only to capitalistic countries but to communist countries also, around 68, in the 60s, 70s, probably, wouldn't you say?
Yes, because once you have a society that is going through urbanization and development, you're going to get international ideas coming in to your society. And even in areas of the world today, very traditional areas like Saudi Arabia and the oil states and other areas like Indonesia and so on, you're getting a trickling effect of woke ideas that spread out. They come through retailers, through fashion, through sports. It's very hard to stop these things because liberalism is also very appealing. Liberalism and capitalism are very appealing and they entice people. They offer you entertainment, sex, a lot of goods, pleasures. So
Hope,
these are
optimism.
very hard to stop. So,
Yeah.
I mean, even in Russia, liberalism was gaining and gaining ground. And to this day, if you go to Russian cities, the major ones, there is a liberal atmosphere. Now, I'm not completely against a liberal atmosphere as long as there is a strong state, a strong elite that takes the interest of the nation and the culture into account and doesn't view human beings as interchangeable units. Because capitalism, if you read any economic textbook, right from the very beginning of the book, human beings are identified as um, beings who are all alike in being self-interested, utility maximizers, and producers or consumers. These are very abstract general terms that you can use to refer to anyone in the world, and that's how they see it. Culture, identity is an obstacle to the free, fluid movement of businesses. They don't want that.
And
So,
Christianity is behind it also.
yeah, Christianity has been heavily influenced by liberalism over the decades. It's very hard to be a Christian today and not be a liberal.
Yeah.
So it's a very powerful force. Liberalism and capitalism. That's why I say to people that you need to study these two forces well to understand. I'm not saying that this is the complete answer, but they're important factors. This is in particular in chapter, the last chapter of this book. The last chapter is about that. It's a long chapter. Chapter 11 is about the role of liberalism and capitalism.
But would you say that, I'll say in my opinion, and please critique it. When we say capitalism and communism and the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc, or what we used to call the Iron Curtain Bloc or whatever, um, people tend to think, at least predominantly, that one thing was free market economy and the other thing was state-run economy. And it's also how at least the right wing, even nowadays, promotes it or describes it or explains it. But wouldn't you say that the majority of the power of American economy is due to its powerful army and due to its win in the Second World War? Wouldn't you say that? And that the army is basically the hand of the government, and the majority of their technological advances come from the interests of the army or the industrial complex connected to it, and it's hard to say that this is a free market economy.
Yes. Um, in my view, the business world um, came to the decision in the 1930s in dealing with the Depression, and then subsequent to that, through the 1940s, 50s, and 60s up until now, the decision was made that markets businesses require the state to play a role in making sure that you have sufficient demand, that you have sufficient consumers, and that if there is inactivity, if for some reason businesses are hesitating in investing because they have they're pessimistic about future prospects. The state will come in and give them subsidies, uh, try and it pays people all kinds of wages through public employees and unemployment insurance and welfare, and it keeps consumers alive and active in the market. And then the state also plays many other roles in ensuring that you have, they fund engineering schools, they help universities with creating business students, administrators, innovators. So there is that sense that the business world understands we're not living in the 19th century, when the state was small. Even libertarians today, in the libertarians of today, they don't want to really go back to the state as it existed in 19th century, because that's impossible. The state is a huge machinery at this point. There are countless of bureaucrats managing schools, hospitals, museums, police departments, all kinds of institutions. So there is a socialistic state that's big. And so when I talk about capitalism and free markets, I take that as a given, as something that is just there and real. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the free operation of businesses and markets in the United States. You still do, um, to a lesser or higher degree, depending on where you are. In some countries, the government plays a bigger role, in some it plays a lesser role. But the government is just part of the whole system.
For example, in Slovenia, you have so many examples of the so called or the pseudo free markets, that are, of course, promoted by the right wing, which is a wing of the Republican Party, which is a wing of the Likud Party. But uh, I mean, they for example, there's this before mentioned SDS, and for example, they there's a national company or nationalized company, and they would put the director to that company, and then then you have a private company which has connections to this party, and through connections to this party, they become a business with the state run company, for example, né? And
Yes,
they say this private company thinks of itself as a private company. They are entrepreneurs and so forth. But for me and for consistent libertarians or anarcho-capitalists, this is not free market. This is and for example, I don't know exactly how it is in Canada or in America, but it seems that in America the right wing's been very similar to the right wing in Slovenia. For they all the politicians are, of course, are taxpayer funded. Of course, politicians are taxpayer funded. So, if a right wing politician has been a right wing politician his whole life, he's been funded by taxpayers, and he's been promoting free markets by being a state taxpayer funded man.
yes,
Uh, and even people like deceased Charlie Kirk, for example, he presented himself as a successful entrepreneur. But the fact is that he got money from the donors, and these donors are connected to the Republican Party in many ways. Many
yes,
ways. And he got that money because of the influence of the Republican Party um, and so forth. And the, you have so many similar cases, and it's, if you look at like that, it seems that it's all just pseudo free market.
Oh yes, I agree. I mean, libertarians, as I said before, I think quite a few of them are realistic enough to know that you cannot function in a scientific, heavily populated, very complicated society with so many institutions and schools and so on without a big state. I mean, would they say we should abolish public schools? No. I mean, if you do, you're irrelevant. You cannot participate in politics because you're not going to get any votes. They're not going to say that. So to me, at least, well, in a very long, in a very long a strong, big state. And I mean strong, not in a nationalistic sense, but simply a socialistic state that is here to stay for a while. Capitalism, that's what Keynesian economics is about. You need, for markets to work, you need government intervention.
Okay, I saw one of your tweets about Stalin, and it was a really interesting position you have about Stalin. Would you explain it to us? Describe it to us?
I wrote a few. Which one is that? Because I
Yes. Wait, let me find it. Just a second. Mm. Mm, 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 mm. This is Hope. No, I have to go to your profile.
I had like three recently, and I had two a few months ago. I had two.
Yeah,
Uh,
I probably. I meant the reason
yeah,
to
do you mean
reason.
the one where I say that Stalin was the most successful politician in the modern age, or do you mean the one with the picture where I have the Stalin? There these sports people, athletic men, and I compare them to people in Portland. Um, but in any case, the
No, I
question,
meant this one, Joseph. Yeah, you explain, describe your position on Stalin, and in comparison, for example, to Western leaders, or
yeah, I mean, I'm not a Stalinist by any means. I'm very critical of Stalin, but I found it fascinating to learn details. I knew this vaguely, although I have read four biographies of Stalin. But I read one recently again, another one, a long one, and I found it fascinating that he was able to accumulate more power than anyone I can think of. Even Mao, I mean, Mao is close uh, because Stalin's power was into every detail of the Communist Party there. I mentioned in one of the tweets that he personally signed the what would happen to about 60 something thousand individuals, what their punishment would be, whether they would be sent to the gulag or they would be shot or they would be tortured and information extracted from them. He oversaw many of the legal cases that were made against former Bolsheviks and other members of the all Bolshevik party. Um, and this went on for years. And he was in charge of every branch of government, very personally involved with all the details of what was happening, every policy that was being made. And you're talking about a gigantic country and all out communist control of the economy, of the army, of every institution, education, the legal system. So the guys involved with all of that. And in the end, the people that were around him, there were about 5 people that were close to him: Malenkov, Peria, Molotov, Milieu King, I mean Luke King, if I get his name correctly, and a few others, very few around, part of the inner circle. And these men were all subservient to him. So they had Beria was in charge of the secret police for a long time. So they had a lot of power in their own right. They had 100 or dozens of personnel and followers that would go with them everywhere they went. But they were very subservient to Stalin. So I was just thinking about how it is that someone can amass so much state power and transform a nation to that degree. And today we have these incredibly weak conservatives who hesitate to take action. Um, like with what happened to Charlie Kirk, it seems to me this gave a good chance to Trump and the Trump administration to take very strong, hard measures against the Democratic Party. I mean, they did it to him. They were locking up people, bringing cases against him. They wanted to destroy him. And I find that they haven't done that much yet. And so, in comparison to Stalin, I'm trying to say, look, there's a lot you can do. Of course, we're not a communist nation, but just a way of thinking about it. Uh, uh, I mean, if it was up to me, I would send quite a few people to our own gulag. I would create a gulag in North America and send a bunch of people there just so they can work and build something. Instead of hanging around the streets committing crimes, taking drugs, I would clean all that out. I mean, if I had the power, I would clean a lot of things out. And I think it would be a good thing. I wouldn't send them to their desk to work, but I would send them to work in collective undertakings, collective undertakings, whether it is cleaning, pollution, the streets, all kinds of things. Um, so yeah, but under liberalism, you just don't have those powers because every single person has individual rights. Now they are rounding up a few illegals, but these are illegals that have committed crimes, so they're rounding them up and sending them away. But they should have sent a lot more. Some of them self deported, like I don't know, a million, 1.5 self deported, from what I hear. Um, but it's very hard in a liberal society because everyone has equal citizenship rights to do that.
But I mean, this is my humble opinion, but it really seems to me that it's been a theater between the left and the right. So when the right immediately attacked the left wing for the murder of Charlie Kirk, even before anything, and the left wing attacked Groypers and Nick Fuentes, and so as in extreme right wing to be fault for his murder. It really seems that it's a theater, and although all the right wingers still believe or purport this idea that it was the left wing or the trans community or the woke community that killed Charlie Kirk, they don't really mean it. I really believe that they don't really mean it. That's why they don't do anything about it, and because they're probably also in it. They're together in it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I sometimes wonder, could this one guy have taken such an accurate shot, and then he seems to fit the bill of, oh, he's a transsexual, whatever, and then you are angry and you go against him. But there could be deeper elements involved in this, but I don't know, and I don't want to speculate because I don't have any evidence otherwise.
It seems to me that this is what the right wing has been focused on for the last months or years. It's the woke ideology, as in if this woke ideology was the worst thing for white people or for our civilization. In my opinion, it hasn't been. In my opinion, this is how I articulated it. It's worse to have six more blacks in the classroom than to have two homosexuals more in the classroom. This is, of course, simplification of the woke ideology, but I think it it represents the truth accordingly. Um, at least this is my opinion, and it was really ad nauseam when they immediately after the event they started to promote this hypothesis that it was a transgender, because they do know. I mean, I see with my normie friends, if I can call that so, people who don't understand, or they don't they are not, they haven't been interested in politics for very long. You can see that when they do get interested in it, it's the anti woke sentiment that drags them in. At least the those that are more virile, as in manly.
Yeah.
They get all mad because of the trends and the woke ideology, and it drags them in. And probably the creators of the theater from behind know that, and this is how they act.
Yes, it could be that I sort of said that in a tweet that the fact that this guy was supposedly into transsexuals or something, that was like red meat for the conservative base to get them all riled up.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, there could be other elements, factors behind him. And as far as I know, they're not looking into that anymore, or they're just looking in,
Oh, they
press
have been
charges
looking.
against you. Yes.
Even they got even Nick Fuentes on board for purporting this um, idea that it was some transgender or some woke person or some lefty, and that it
Yeah.
certainly wasn't Israel. I'm not saying that it was Israel, but the fact that Nick Fuentes started to go against the hypothesis of Israel so hard, and that he and for a couple for a couple of days you could see how the right wingers and Nick Fuentes came together, and they were all in love with each other, and they had nice words for each other. It really it's suspicious, really
Yeah.
suspicious.
Yeah. But I mean, I haven't looked into the case. I have looked more into what will Trump administration do against the Democratic Party. That's sort of the angle I was looking at. Um,
They probably won't do anything because they won't find hard evidence, because they could only plant them, uh, and even that seems to be against their interest, because finally they're in it together, so they even don't want to plant them, because in my opinion they won't find any hard evidence that this was a transgender woke left wing, because Charlie Kirk spoke against left wingers, against woke ideology, against gender ideology for 10 years at least, and nothing
Yeah,
happened to him.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and lately, he's been saying something about against Jewish donors to this woke movement, and that Epstein was Mossad. So in my opinion, to say that it's low IQ anti-Semitism to think that it could be Israel is really suspicious. And when it comes from the greatest anti-Semite in the world, it gets suspicious even more.
Yeah, it is everything. It's complicated, and everything is going to get more and more complicated because there are many interlacing factors and influential things that we don't see, that are not visible, and the media, even when they find things out, like I mean, you saw with the Epstein files, they're not going to release that kind of information to the public. There's a lot that they don't want people to know about. So, yeah, I think a lot of things look like they will remain hidden from us.
Yeah, and or you probably saw. Did you see the ceremony?
Which, oh yeah,
Was
where they were giving speeches and all of that.
the spectacle, and it
Yeah,
looked like WWE spectacle, really, or some Olympic Games.
yeah.
This
Well, let's hope that at least they do some a few things. That's what I'm hoping, that they do a few things at least. That they're more decisive against the left wing side of woke. Yeah. Yes.
Doug, I promised I won't take too much time from you. I will have to thank you once again to come to my little tiny channel and to give us all the privilege to listen to you and to your answers. Do you have any final thoughts?
Well, I hope your listeners, I guess, look into some of my books. I used to have a blog, and it's still there, but it is right now inactive. I had it 11 years, and I wrote a lot of articles, and many people wrote articles for it. But I felt that it was losing in influence. It looks to me like a lot of people are going into X, and that's where they are, and that X is sucking the life out of a lot of other media, and even Substack. I know some people have Substack articles and they send them to X, but the X audience wants quick information. I write longer X commentaries almost as a substitute for articles to get people to read a little bit more. So your followers maybe can follow me if they want to read about this stuff. But there's no question that it looks like a lot of things are happening at X, which in a way is good because um, many of our ideas are I have never seen in the last 2 years, last year, I have seen more widespread acknowledgement that we on the far right, I don't mind saying far right even without quotation marks, but that we on the far right were correct. Immigration is not a good thing. The races are not coming together. Our societies in Europe and North America are anti-white. Um, and Charlie Kirk, you mentioned him before, he was realizing a lot of these things as well. He never would talk about whites. Then he started talking quite a bit about it. Then he went against legal immigration. It was only illegal. Then he said we got to stop legal immigration. So our ideas have spread, and I think X has played quite a role in that. And I see them growing and growing because um, the problems that immigration has created are not solvable. And liberalism, in many ways, has no solutions anymore but to call you a racist or a fascist because they have no arguments. they used to have arguments in the 70s, 80s, because that's when diversity began. So they had arguments for it and how good it would be. But those arguments have fallen. They're not good. So that's good for our side.
Okay. The less common Americans, Canadians need to experience 33 Europe for themselves. Until then, they will be trapped in right left bullshit. Might be, but hopefully we don't ever, not Canadians, not Americans, relieve the 41 till 45. Although I don't know, not that optimistic. But once again, Dr. Duchesne, thank you for coming to my podcast. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you for thinking about your answers and so forth. I'm really glad that you came. I feel privileged and nothing to all the audience. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. And see you soon.
Okay, Alex, good to be with your audience.
Thanks for remembering the intonation and for my name. So goodbye.
All right.